right in our front row. It'll be Republicans, Democrats, and progressives and Greens all smoking the same weed and turning around doing selfies on the Joker, and they're all having a great time together.
Hello and welcome to this podcast conversation of the Epic Kate Show. This conversation is with Kenny Lee Lewis. He is the longest member of the Steve Miller Band, besides Steve Miller himself. And he's just, wow, what a fascinating life. I get to talk to such cool people. As the title warns you, this is a big ol' liberal progressive conversation. Not the entire part, but I wasn't going to try to extricate everything that could be politically triggering for someone from the details of his time with the band and his time of getting to perform with a couple of the Beatles at a concert and his creative and business endeavors. So I just decided to basically put this conversation in its entirety here. I never know how these conversations are gonna go. I never know what people are gonna be excited to talk about, what they're gonna be passionate about, and I'm just along for the ride, getting to know them and having fun. I hope you will enjoy this conversation. I hope you will stick around for more of them. I've got a lot of wonderful people I've talked to on this channel and a lot more wonderful people to come. Thanks to Kenny Lee Lewis for talking to me. I also talked to his wife, Diane, and I have just part of our conversation uploaded. She's also so wonderful to talk to. I'm really excited to share the rest of that. So, let's get into it.
Hello, thank you so much for being on my channel.
Kate, yeah, it's so nice to be here. Thanks for having me. I can't believe we're able to communicate over the pond like this.
It's so neat. So, Kenny Lee Lewis, you've been in the music industry for a minute, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. And I've spent some time in Stockholm way back in the Abracadabra tour. We played Tivoli Gardens and, hung out and we stayed at, I think it was the Sheraton or something that's on the R River there or whatever. And I used to go fishing right out in front of the hotel where the guys were dressed up like in these beef eater outfits. And I'd see me walking out of the front of the hotel with my fly rod. And I go down there and I start catching fish on the dock there. This was 1982. You probably weren't even alive yet.
I was not. No. My parents were in high school.
Reminding me, that makes me feel just great. No.
Sorry.
I've spent a little time in Stockholm. Now, are you in Stockholm or are you somewhere else?
I'm on an island of Sweden called Gotland.
Oh, okay. How far is that from Stockholm?
About a 3-hour ferry ride and a good car ride after that.
Really? A ferry ride and a car ride? Wow, that's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a beautiful island. You got to come visit someday.
Oh, yeah, okay. That sounds wonderful. Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah.
We're hoping to get over to Europe again, now that this COVID stuff is lifting and they're starting to, do some special passes for some American bands to come over and tour and whatnot. So, I might get over there eventually. We usually do mostly, the Western European stuff, with England and Germany and France and, that kind of stuff. Yeah, Belgium. But hopefully we'll get up north. We haven't been out there in a long time. What's up going on in Sweden? I heard you guys were having a lot of interesting political things going on. There's a lot of conservatives that are starting to rise up. I know COVID came and went, but you guys also had a little bump there where it wasn't too fun.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of keeping up with a little bit of the news of Sweden, but not a whole lot. But feel free to ask me questions, anything you want.
Cool. So to answer your question, in Sweden, there's some people that think it would be better to be more like America in some ways, and that are more like Sweden first, and not wanting to be as caring about refugees and things like that. But for the most part, it's really wonderful in Sweden. Like when a person gets sick, they're not thinking, oh no, I'm going to lose my house because I got cancer. There's support. And when our kids were born premature, it would have been $1 million, easy, 6 weeks in the hospital, but we didn't have to pay because high taxes. So I'm happy to pay high taxes. I'm happy to pay that forward and have security.
Yep, that's the way we are. See, I'm a progressive, what we call a progressive in the United States. And I was a Bernie Sanders guy, and that's where we're coming from. We understand that becoming a globalist nation is just inevitable. We can't avoid that. We're all sharing this planet together. We can't just be all this rah rah cis boom bop patriotic. I got mine, you go get yours. We got to share the whole planet together, and it's like that's the thing that's so hard for me to get across to a lot of people that are still kind of like that old traditionalist, I don't know. I mean, I like the flag. I like our Constitution. I love what the forefathers wrote. I love the freedoms we have in this nation. I love that the veterans fought for our freedoms. I have all that going on. So I am a proud American as far as that goes. But at the same time, we're just guests here in North America. I'm also very aware of the indigenous population is like we're guests still, and it's like we have to keep remembering that. And if we're going to be here, we got to learn how to make our bed and clean the kitchen, and don't let a bunch of dishes stack up in the sink. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And I think it also really helps that both you and I have done extensive traveling. We've seen, like, wow, this isn't the only way the world works. Like,
Right.
we've met people who've benefited from systems that are inclusive and have more compassion in them. I remember, so
That's one of the problems we have in this country is that so many people in what we call these flyover states, they never go anywhere. They just live in the same town all their life. They might go to another state. They might take a vacation to Hawaii once, but they don't really see what the rest of the world is like. They just stay insulated in their little bubble. And it's so easy for them to sit in an armchair and make commentary about, petro-driven economy and taxes and, the borders and, pharmaceuticals and, all this different stuff. They don't even have an idea of what it's like to be in the real world. And that's no insult on them. It's just that they haven't traveled. And what you just say is really, really true.
so do you remember a time when you were traveling and you were around things that just was serious culture shock for you?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I haven't been to super third world places in my life. I've never been to Asia. I haven't been to the Soviet Union. I haven't been to India. But I have been, to Mexico a lot and Belize and Central America and a couple other places where you really can see what it's like to be living on, poverty level. I mean, so yeah, I was pretty shocked at seeing some of the neighborhoods down in Mexico over my lifetime. Um, I can't say that I've seen anything in Europe that was that bad, but of course there are some pretty funky areas like in some of the bigger towns like Barcelona, I'm sure, and I'm trying to think of where we were recently. Uh, Pretty much all the towns we went to were pretty nice. So I haven't seen as much as I. The one thing I have seen, of course, is the reservation system in the United States as opposed to in Canada, for instance, and the Native American and First Nations reserves and reservation systems can be pretty bad. Canada actually seems to be a little bit better in terms of the way they've treated their indigenous, in terms of their the way it looks. But you go to these Blackfoot reservations. You go to I was of course involved with Standing Rock. I went there, and these people are living like not what a normal American would be living in. Like now, are there poor white people up in Appalachia? Absolutely, they're there too. And I have seen a little of that. I've been up in West Virginia and been in some small towns up there, so I kind of get it. I get my arms around all that. That's the reason why social democracy is something that we can't avoid. It's something that is part of our responsibility as a moral human being. It's not a matter of just being dumb or a snowflake or rolling over and giving our money up to people and all that crap you hear about all the time from all these opposition conservatives who really don't know anything. Like I say, they've never been anywhere. So all they do is they say, you don't like America, leave, get out. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm just as much I have a right to be here as you. It's just that I have a different way of looking at things.
Yeah.
So,
And so many of them are like, I wish we could go back to the 1950s. What a great time that was. Things were so much better, and families were families, and black was black, and white was white. And like, yeah, because
yeah,
white people were in the power, because there was all the Jim Crow was happening. Like, it wasn't such a utopian time for everyone.
Well, just remember this: before there was Donald Trump, there was Duck Dynasty. And Duck Dynasty was a huge show where those people were talking all that same stuff that you almost hear on the floor in Congress now. And it's like they all grew up with Duck Dynasty. And it's like, when that guy, whoever that leader was that, looked like a hillbilly from wherever, he said, yeah, it was much better back in the old days because the black people, they had their little world and they were happy and they content. They all had jobs and their family, and we were all happy and content, and we all got along, and it was just great till all these liberals screwed it all up. I mean, where is that coming from? It is so blind and so stupid. There's actually people right now in America that still subscribe to that kind of mentality. It's just amazing. I don't know how to get to them or how to sit them down and tie them to a chair and put earplugs in their ears and tape over their mouth and make them watch some freaking documentaries that'll make them kind of start thinking about what reality really is all about. But of course they would say that's all fake news, so you can't get to them. It's just no way that you can win. But instead, I think we're starting to make a turn here in America. We just had this election, of course. Now, am I happy that Joe Biden's president? It's better than Trump, but to me, it's like doing chemo. I've always told people I voted for Biden because it's almost like politically I was stage 4 and I had no choice but to get the chemo. You know what I mean? That's kind of what it was like to me. But yeah, I mean, there's still bad Democrats and we still have a lot of fat and pork or whatever they want to call it, in our budget and our economy. And so, yeah, there needs to be changes there too. There's a lot of graft and corruption. There's a lot of hypocrisy, so, I'm not a big fan of Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden, but right now, I think that it's at least a Band-Aid over the wound that we've inflicted on ourselves over the last 4 years.
Yeah. Oh, I had something to say. Oh, yes, I found it. On my channel, I have conversations to try to open up people who are willing to think compassionately and step outside of what they know to absolutely be true and hopefully get their hearts changed. Like conversations with the queer pastor about the Bible not being anti-LGBTQ, and conversations with people of color about what white privilege is and that it exists.
Yep.
And
I go to a church where the pastor is openly gay, and it's like it's got a good following. Everybody has a great time. Other than that, it's just a regular church, and everybody, worships in their own way or whatever. But he's just saying, look, don't hate me, and I'm still love Jesus. I'm just this way, I mean, I can't help it.
yeah,
You can't put a cattle prod up my ass and try to make it right. Like some of these people down south are saying, oh yeah, there's treatment for that. You can get cured of homosexuality. It's like they still are thinking about that, and it's like, no, I mean, since the 1960s, we've already established that this is a legitimate lifestyle. You got to stop trying to change it or run from it or be fearful of it.
I had a really great conversation with John Savage, that's his name, about how we can't always be thinking about these things because it will steal all of our joy and everything. Like sometimes you have to put aside these struggles and just breathe.
You're talking about John Savage, the actor?
Butcher, John Butcher.
Oh, John Butcher, the guitar player.
Guitar, yeah. I get my names all twisted up sometimes.
Okay, yeah. I didn't know whether we were talking Deer Hunter here or heavy metal. Oh, okay, yeah. So he's right, absolutely right. And yeah, it's music is the great healer that if we can live inside the vibration of that harmonic structure and serve it up like so many band-aids and elixirs, that we might be able to bring everybody together and heal the world. Because the Steve Miller Band, when we go out and play, we have people from all political, factions coming. I mean, right in our front row, it'll be Republicans, Democrats, and progressives and Greens, all smoking the same weed and turning around doing selfies on the Joker, and they're all having a great time together, So that moment in time, they're all getting along, and so that's such a beautiful thing to watch, and part of what we do with our delivery system, with our little gypsy band that we go and do around America with the Steve Miller Band, who, by the way, are just starting to get back together again. We got our first gig coming up in 2 weeks, and then in the fall we're going to start doing some more work, and then by next year, hopefully, we'll be doing a summer tour again.
How long have you been with this band?
I've been with Steve Miller for 39 years this year, on and off. I mean, I've taken breaks and come back and whatnot. But I met him in '81, and we worked on the Abracadabra album, which went #1 in Sweden, which was great. And we came over in '82 to promote it. So in 2022, it'll be 40 years that I've been touring with him. And I'm one of the new guys in the band. I mean, we think about Boz Scaggs and Tim Davis and Lonnie Turner and all the other people that have been before me. Greg Douglas, who I just interviewed the other day, by the way, the guy that wrote Jungle Love. Those guys all came before me, so I'm one of the newer guys. But the band that we have now, I am the senior member. All the other guys are a little newer than me. But it's hard to believe that I was once the new guy.
Wow.
That's how long I've been doing this.
That must be so special to have these relationships. So there's just nothing like it when you've seen each other at the absolute highs and the absolute lows.
Yep, absolutely. And we're like a family. We've been all over this stuff. This COVID thing really knocked us for a loop, but we had been touring pretty extensively since 2004 without a break. And our manager several times since then have said, you know what, maybe we should take a year off, and that way we can kind of come back, have a comeback thing. Because you gotta kind of go away to come back, obviously.
Yeah.
That's just part of physics. But it also helps, to keep your price up and make sure you're not overexposed and all the zip codes, blah blah blah. And so when this came along, it was kind of like an automatic that we had no choice because we hadn't really elected to do that on our own. So now I'm sure that our touring business next year is just going to explode. It's just that Steve is getting older. Of course, he's going to be turning. I think he's turning 78 this year in October. So he's getting up there, just like the Rolling Stones and the rest of them. But he's in really good health, and he's still singing the songs in the original keys, most of them anyway. And we don't use any stem tracks. We sing everything live, and he just calls songs as he goes where we're playing. And it's like a real band. So hopefully we'll still have that energy and be boogieing along in 2022.
Nice. I really appreciate in your music that it really defies genres too. Like it's you can just vibe to it and you don't know what's going to come next.
Yep. Steve likes to put a little blues in there, because he grew up playing the blues in Dallas and Chicago as a young man. And so he wants to stay true to that. But of course, everybody's heard blues till they're blue in the face, And, sometimes we'll be in the middle of a blues song. You'll see people get up and go get a T-shirt or, a beer or something, but that's okay. But the ones that like that will stay and really, really enjoy it. So we try to give a great variety of not only the hits, but, stuff that, Steve dislikes personally from when he was a kid.
So I was watching some clips on YouTube and I saw that there was this big concert that you were and then like a whole bunch of people were all on stage together. I think it was a like For the Earth kind of thing, and you were like singing, and you were like right next to one of the Beatles. Was it Paul?
What happened was that Paul McCartney was closing that show, and I had just met him that evening earlier in the green room. But my wife Diane Steinberg, who was Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds in the Sgt. Pepper movie with the Bee Gees and Peter Frampton, she knew Paul from that far back, because of course George Martin was producing all the music, and Paul was sort of involved with that, and so she already knew Paul, and so we were just sitting there on the side of the stage near the end of the show, and then he just called Diane and I out and said, come on out and help me and do the Hey Jude for everyone to close the show. Diane and Kenny, come on. And then he turned to the other side and he went, Ringo, you too, come on out. And so here's Diane and I and Ringo all coming to the center. Boom, we start singing, na, 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 na. And CNN takes the shot, and I got a copy of that video, and that's been sitting in my closet for years. And so I finally decided to transfer it the other day and put it into digital format. I put it on YouTube, and that's what you saw.
The show was sponsored by Concerts for the Environment.
That is such a neat memory.
Yeah, no, it was a really great thing. And of course, we've been around and met Paul several times after that too. But that was the first for me. That was my introduction to Paul McCartney.
Were you like pinching yourself when he called you up?
Yeah, no. When he said Diane and Kenny come out, I just kind of went like this. And then Diane, who's a big star, grabs my hand. He goes, "Come on!" And she just drags me out there, and I'm like going, "Okay." And of course, everybody else that was on that show. I mean, we had like on that show was Don Henley, Kenny Loggins, Natalie Merchant. God, and of course, Paul. But I mean, a lot of other artists were there, and they all came on stage, just so that when you see that clip, you can see everybody's already come out. They never got a shot of me and Diana and Ringo coming out. They hadn't turned on the camera yet. I mean, when he did that is when they fumbled. They go, "Oh, get ready," And while we were coming out is when they got ready to do the shot. So what you see is just when we finally got out there, we're standing right behind Ringo singing. But yeah, no, I was kind of in shock. And once I got out there, you can see me. I'm like, "Whoa, man," because I'm a fanboy at that point. I'm no longer a rock star. I'm a fanboy. So that was fun.
Whoa. So would you say that's one of your career highlights?
Well, other than that, that was pretty cool. My father was a big band enthusiast, and of course, he loved Benny Goodman and Glenn Miller and Count Basie and Woody Herman. He was a big band guy all through the 40s and 50s, and one of his favorite records was Benny Goodman live at Carnegie Hall. And so when Les Paul turned 90 years old, the city and the Les Paul Society put together a birthday party for Les at Carnegie Hall. And because Steve Miller is Les Paul's godson, we were invited to come perform. And so we got to play there with all these great people. I met Tommy Emmanuel and Pat Martino and Bucky Pizzarelli. And, I think Neil Schon was there. And, I think Steve Vai. I mean, wait a minute. Oh, Joe Satriani. All these people were backstage, and it was just such a thrill. But I was able to tell my dad, who was still alive at the time, I said, "Dad, I finally made it. I'm playing Carnegie Hall tomorrow night." And he just went crazy. So that was a great moment for me to share with my father.
That's like being able to share things with the people and just making them proud. There's just no feeling like that.
Yeah, well, but of course, he wasn't a big rock and roll guy, so he didn't really get the early part of my career anyway. But once I started doing well and bought a nice house and had them over and stuff, he was like, "Yeah, you're doing great, kid. Keep it up." It's pretty funny because he wasn't like a big rock and roll guy. He liked big band music, but I also played in big bands. I've also been a jazz player, and I learned how to read notation. And here in my local college, Cuesta Night Band, I was doing a couple of years ago. It was a 14-piece big band, and we did shows, and it was great. Unfortunately, he was already gone by then. I wasn't able to share that with him, but he would have been. But I did that. I did that in college too. I played in big bands, and so I've kind of been in and out of that type of music. But rock and roll, pop rock, and R&B, and disco, and I mean all the other derivations. Those are the things that put food on the table for me and my family, and that's just a sign of the time that rock and roll, it's been around for 65 years, and it's not going away anytime soon.
I would love to just explore and talk to every single rock and roller that has a passion for it about the beginnings of it and the part that it played in breaking down segregation and the voice that it was of, fight the man and do what's right. That's those messages just resonate so deeply.
Yeah, the problem is that a lot of the artists nowadays are not writing or doing cover songs that they acquire based upon lyrical content that could help change things. They just want to just make people feel good. Yeah. So they lean towards dancing, sex, a little drug talk, or just getting high, drinking beer, even in country music, Oh, yeah. And there's not a whole lot of content like we had in the golden era, which I consider to be 1965 through 1975. That was the golden era when pop rock musicians and even folkies were sending messages that were actually helping to change world opinion about issues, politics, ecology, whatever, and it was I think that contributed to the eventual breakdown and the destruction of the wall in Berlin in 1985 or whenever that was. It led up to that, because all those kids in Soviet, Eastern Germany and also in Soviet Union, they were listening to that same music if they could get it bootleg, and they were listening to those words and they agreed. They were sort of yeah, we need to get rid of all this kind of stuff and come together and break down walls. And I'm proud to say was part of that golden era. I think it contributed to changing world opinion. But right now, we have a lot of artists that are just selling out to the highest bidder of who they're going to endorse in terms of shoes, clothing, headphones, pharmaceuticals, I mean, whatever the hell that they're selling. They're not concentrating on trying to save the world, like our Bob Dylans and our Bob Geldofs and our Neil Youngs and these people that were moving forward to try to change the world by using their art as a platform. But the conservatives don't like that. They just say, "Oh, shut up and just play your guitar."
Yeah.
I'll pay $200 for the ticket to come see it, but can you just shut up about the politics on stage? Just play your guitar. No, we're going to use our bully pulpit because we got the microphone and you don't. So we're going to tell what we feel from our heart to try to influence so we can spread the message that which we think would be part of a grand utopian society if we ever possibly could reach that, which looks pretty dim at this point, but we're getting there.
I think one of the songs that I've heard recently that sounded the most Christian, the most changing the world is a Pink Floyd song, "On the Turning Away." Are you familiar? Yeah.
Oh, wow. Turning Away?
On the Turning Away.
On the Turning Away?
Yeah. About turning away, seeing something happening that's wrong, seeing someone that's hurt and just turning away from them because it's not your problem.
Yeah.
Oh.
Putting blinders on.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm working with Scotty Page in 2 weeks, actually less than 2 weeks. In about a week, I'm going to be working with Scotty Page on a gig, and I'll ask him about that song because he's probably familiar with it because, of course, he played saxophone with them on their, Sound of Distant Thunder tour, and he was with them several
And the
years.
Momentary Lapse of Reason tour. That's the song that album is on.
That's what I forgot. I had a moment of lapse there. So yeah, I'll ask him about that song.
Yeah, I had a really great conversation with him not too long ago. When you were talking about some of those things, I was like, I bet you guys are friends. You have very similar outlooks.
Yeah, we've had this band called the Hang Dynasty for a long time, and if anybody out there wants to see what it's about, you can go to Hang, Hang Dynasty, just like like a dynasty. Hangdynasty.com, and we have videos on there I think we're playing with Edgar Winter and a bunch of different people. But yeah, you can check out that band, and that's kind of what we're doing next week. We're doing a smaller version of that at a corporate party. Hang Dynasty.
Cool. Definitely look that up. There's so much music to discover out there. It's so exciting.
Yeah, if you want to check out my bands, I have a couple different bands. I have a band that I do with my wife that's an interesting band called Barflies, BARFLYZ as in zebra, music.com, barfliesmusic.com. You can kind of see that it's kind of a pop jazz crossover with female vocals and originals and stuff. And then I have another one that I'm actually got a gig that I'm doing. I'm actually doing the state fair this year here. I'm also doing a show for our lighthouse. We have a lighthouse out here on the coast, and we keep going. It's about a 200-year-old lighthouse. I'm actually doing the fundraiser for that. But anyway, that band is called Friends, FRENZ as in zebra, music.com. You can see what that band's all about.
Well, I will definitely put all those links down below.
Oh, great. Perfect. And then, of course, my website is just kennyleelewis.com and kind of gives you a little more background about me. And then I also have a teaching website for guitar lessons right now. If you want to go to that and check it out, there's a free trial. It's called It's called fretfriends.com, FRET as in fret on a guitar, and then FRENZ, so fretfriends.com, and you can see there's a little intro that you might enjoy, and then there's a free trial too, and that's guitar lessons for beginner, intermediate, advanced, whatever. And I just launched that, and I also have my YouTube channel, which is also pretty active right now. I just did an interview with Jimmy Vivino the other day, who was, of course, the MD for Conan O'Brien all those years. And he's a fantastic blues aficionado guy, and we had just had a great time. So go to Kenny Lee Lewis YouTube channel and see the Jimmy Vivino interview there. It's kind of like what we're doing now. Only we played some blues and stuff together over Zoom. It was kind of fun.
Nice.
So kind of the things that I've been involved in. And then also, I have a book. I'm also a writer. And so I have a novel, a sci-fi fantasy novel on Amazon.com. If you want to check it out, it's called Skeleton Dolls, Children of the Tower. And it's about twins who speak in their own language from the time they were children. And if you've ever known any identical twins, sometimes they speak in their own language. And they kind of lose it after they start preschool and stuff. But in this book, the girls, I actually met a pair of twins. Of course, they'd be a pair. I met twins, female twins. They were identical, and I met their mother, and they told me the stories about. She told me the stories of what they were like when they were little, and it just made the hair on my arm stand up. And so I wrote this novel around their real life story, and then I kind of taken it into a Stephen King, Dan Brown kind of area with the rest of the novel. But it's pretty good. And what they do is they sing incantations in this ancient language, and we find out that it's the original language of God prior to the Tower of Babel. Because if you read the Old Testament, it says we all spoke the same language at one point in time, and then after the Tower of Babel was destroyed, we were all spread out all over the world, and then that's how we developed all the cultures and different languages. But at one time, we all spoke this language, and it had power, and that's what they speak. It just comes naturally to them through the Spirit.
That's so cool.
Like speaking in tongues at church, it's that kind of thing. So, but that's what the book is based upon. So that's on Amazon.com. Skeleton Dolls, Children of the Tower, hard copy and Kindle. So go check it out. It's pretty cool. And I wrote a sequel too, and I'm shopping that right now, trying to get an agent. So I hope that I can in my retirement years become a literary writer.
Ooh, that is really, really cool.
Up to date on all the stuff that I've been doing.
So when do you sleep?
Very, very. I have a CPAP. I have one of those CPAP machines, and I put that on about maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, and I sleep till about sunrise, maybe 6, 7 o'clock. And because of that CPAP, I can sleep 4 or 5 hours, and I'm totally refreshed because I'm getting uninterrupted sleep with no snoring or anything. And I get totally vitalized from that. Without that, I wouldn't be able to do this kind of pace, believe me.
So the
Okay.
funny thing is, I have twins. I'm married.
Are they identical?
We're pretty sure they are. They look very much the same.
Did they ever speak in their own language when they were little?
No, but
Okay.
my husband.
It doesn't happen all the time.
No.
It's a phenomenon. Sometimes fraternal twins do it, but more than likely, identicals are the ones that actually do that because they share one placenta.
Oh, well, actually, twins can. So there's it depends on when the egg splits. So they had 2 different placentas, but they still could be identical depending on when the egg split or not. So the only way to really be sure is to have a DNA test.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So is that covered by your social medicine? Would they pay for that?
No, and that's like $100 that we don't have. Which doesn't really matter anyway. So yes, I'm married to a Swede. We traveled around the world, but not to Asia, but we traveled all over Europe, all over a huge chunk of the US, and all over South Africa.
Wow.
We were with the Christian theater company and spent a decade traveling around doing plays.
Well, you've seen a lot of the world that I haven't seen, so I hail you for your exposure.
Yeah, it was very fun, and it was obviously really hard. Like, people only see the really neat part of a person's job, like, wow, you're a rock star, what a cool life, and they don't see the exhaustion after the adrenaline drops.
Oh, yeah.
They don't see
even just riding on the tour bus is tough because they were nice enough to give me the back stateroom in our tour bus because I'm the senior member now, which I'm very appreciative of. But the stateroom sits right over the engine and the back axle. So on those terrible roads that infrastructure budgeting is not fixed yet, and back east, for instance, where there's a lot of rough weather, I'm bouncing up and down all night. I can't sleep, so I can't even get any rest till I get to the hotel at sunrise.
Oh, no.
Well, what am I going to? You know what I mean? So that alone is really hard. I mean, I'm spending most of my day just trying to sleep to get ready to do the show. You know what I mean? I mean, that in itself is like a job. And then we have a sound check, which is a 2-hour experience, with rehearsal and whatnot. And then, we got to go back to our rooms and kind of get ready for the show, and then we do the show, and then we come right off stage usually. And if we're not staying overnight at that location, we just come straight off stage and get right on the bus and just take off right there. Boom. We don't have a receiving party. There's no party in the green room afterwards. So there's no romance. There's no hang. There's nothing but just fatigue and bouncing over the back axle on the back of the bus.
Yeah. Yeah, we have I haven't had to sleep in a bouncing car, but I've had so many times of being sick of feeling homeless, like
Right.
searching for a bathroom in a mall or a gas station.
Speaking of bathrooms on the bus, which we usually lease, they don't even allow us to do number 2 in the bathroom. We have to wait to get to either a gas station or wait to the hotel. So there's two, you're sitting there going for hours on end. That's the kind of stuff. I mean, here we are. We're like these big rock stars a couple hours earlier playing for 10,000 people. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. The next thing you know, we can't get any sleep and we can't go to the bathroom. What kind of a life is that?
Oh, so glamorous.
There you go. There's the romantic life of a rock star.
Yep. We have a lot in common with the traveling life and knowing that exhaustion. But
you're tired already.
No. It's just like when you start thinking about it, it's almost like you're transported back, and it helps you to just be so thankful for a bed and a bathroom and just a place to call home.
Right. So are you considered to be a stay-at-home mom?
My kids go to daycare 3 days a week. So, but other than that, I mean, I guess I would be. My gig is editing for other YouTubers.
Oh, okay. All right. So you do video editing?
Yeah, I don't do like fancy animated GIFs or something. I like to bring out people's personality. And something that I would really love to do is take people who have fans, who have stories to tell, who have a community, and they want to have a YouTube channel. They want to connect with them, but they don't know how to edit. They don't have time to edit. They don't know how to even upload to YouTube. Maybe I would love to be that person that kind of coaches them to what to do, or is, managing the channel for them.
Right. Well, that's kind of what I've been doing because I can't afford, because I've been out of work for 15 months with this COVID thing. That's what I'm doing myself with these interviews I'm doing. I'm learning how to edit video like you're talking about. It's not easy. It's tedious. It's hours on end. I mean, especially when you're trying to take out, like in conversation, because when you cut to the audio, the video gets all herky jerky, and you're trying to make it smooth out. Sometimes you'll use a dissolve or something, but most of the time you just let it go. And we just kind of look like we're doing like, we look like, the Talking Heads. We look like David Byrne doing, same as it always was. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. And so again, I hail you for becoming a video editor because I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I love it. And I started YouTube 2 years ago, and I really just learned so much about myself, learned how to be authentic. And I just believe so much in vulnerability and not cutting out all the mistakes, because the unexpected things, the mistakes, the interruptions, those show real genuine moments.
How old are they now?
They're going to be 5 in August.
Wow. I know they're a handful. Wow.
Who are some people who've left an impact on your life?
Musically or philosophically or just all around? Or
all around.
That's a big question. Jimi Hendrix, both as a musician and as a lyricist, had a great impact on me as a child because he was writing about subject matters that were, like I was talking about earlier, were heavy. I mean, he was talking about handicapped people and indigenous people and, political plastic fingers. And, and he was writing about stuff that as a young 12, 13-year-old kid, man, I was like opening my mind to all kinds of stuff that I never would have known about because that wasn't really why. I mean, on the news, all they were showing was the Vietnam War raging and how cool it was that we had a great body count that day. That was the kind of stuff that I was watching. It was really depressing. So in taking some psychedelics and hanging out with Jimi Hendrix, I was able to open my mind to a new perspective about what the earth really meant to me. And so he would be one of the first, obviously. And then, of course, the Beatles, John Lennon, similar, same kind of situation because he was writing about subject matter like that. And then, just all around people, Jacques Cousteau was like a big influence on me for ecology. I I'm trying to think of some other people that were non-musicians. I mean, well, Gandhi, obviously, because of his nonviolent protest. So you asked a big question. This is a big can of worms. Of course, Martin Luther King with his message, and also Malcolm X, because they were coming from two different sides of the Black community, but still wanting the same goal. And I thought that was wonderful. I'm married to a Black woman, so I have a sensitivity to that. Plus, Indigenous people, like Black Elk, the Book of Black Elk, in his last recollections of, the Custer battlefield, and the Plains Indians, and the whole concept of indigenous thinking. And then studying Merlin and his philosophy in terms of the language that he spoke in, which in my book talks about how the languages the twins were speaking prior to the Tower of Babel is also the same incantations that Merlin was doing back in the day that gave him power and supernatural things and the ability to live beyond his age and whatever. So all those people, and things. And my favorite guitar players were Wes Montgomery, Terry Kath of Chicago, of course, Jimmy I've already mentioned. And then, the English invasion guys, Beck, Clapton, and Jimmy Page, all those guys were big influences on me, which came through the John Mayall camp. So John Mayall was a great influence in terms of his taste. And then, of course, the Memphis sound.
I had a conversation with John Velasco recently, and he's like an amazing manager and worked with so many legendary people. And like we were talking about how the most fascinating stories aren't with the big household name stars. It's the stories behind them. It's the people. It's the people you don't know that were there that made it happen.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I'm interviewing all these celebrity guitar players on my YouTube channel, because I've scheduled about 12 of them right now. They're all really important guys that were not necessarily the star, but we're talking about Jack Sonny, who was right behind Mark Knopfler in Dire Straits. We're talking about Jay Graydon, who played the guitar solo on Peg for Steely Dan. We're talking about Greg Douglas, who I just interviewed, who wrote Jungle Love for Steve Miller. The list just goes on. I'm just going to keep interviewing people like that. And all of them have just tons and tons of stories that they tell on those interviews with me. In addition to us playing, they tell all those blood and guts stories you're talking about, where they were there when it was happening, and it's like just an amazing, rich amount of information that some of them are doing their life story books, but some of them are not, some of them are just going to kind of fade into history. And I want to make sure I document their stories, not so much just for my purposes of my YouTube channel subscriptions, which helps, of course, but I just want to get their story out there told. So when we're all gone and pushing up daisies, their story will continue on with the new generation. And of course, there's many other influences too. I mean, there's Zig Ziglar, and there's, Napoleon Hill for sales and marketing and getting the things you want in life. All you got to do is help people find what they need, and you'll have everything you'll need, and because I'm a salesman too, as you can tell. And so there's influences there. I mean, and then as far as politics, I like Dwight D. Eisenhower. You were talking about wanting to go back to the 50s. Well, as far as a president goes, here's a Republican president that I'd vote for. Eisenhower was great. Now, was there still Jim Crow going on? Did we still have civil rights problems? Were we still, polluting the atmosphere? Absolutely. All that was going on during Leave It to Beaver. You know what I mean? So it wasn't the greatest time, but politically, I think Dwight D. Eisenhower had the right idea.
Yeah, I made a whole video about learning about the New Deal and all these things. They're like, wait, this was actually a good thing.
Yeah, well, that was Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Okay, I got I get people mixed up sometimes.
Well, he was a Democrat, but he was a fiscally conservative guy. But he invented work for people to do that would serve the better good of our infrastructure. And that's all we're trying to do with this big fat budget in Congress right now is get our infrastructure going on. Can you imagine how many jobs would be created if we completely got rid of our power grid and rebuilt it underground and made it all safe and within channels that you could go service and get it off the surface so the enemies can't blow it out with bombs? It's just, you know what I'm saying? It's like if we completely redid our 100-year-old Thomas Edison grid or power grid, can you imagine the amount of jobs that would create? Just that alone, you
And what
know?
about those bridges in New York City? Those things are rickety. They need to be rebuilt.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, all our dams and levees and river systems and agriculture and, irrigation and water conservation. I mean, that you've got to spend money to make those things, operate, efficiently. They'll spend that much time building a nuclear power plant, but they won't do it to try to help anything else. They just want to make the money on the power. They're not thinking about the big picture. I mean, if we could invent an atom bomb with a committee of people over a period of a few months, you'd think they'd be able to invent a hydrogen battery that's recyclable, that has a lot of power. And I know that's going on right now, but we could force that federally. We could make electric power become a federal mandate and get rid of the V8 engine in passenger cars for families and soccer moms and all that stuff, and only allow a V8 for a pickup truck that's on being used on a farm or hauling around some kind of an industrial trailer, not a travel trailer, an industrial trailer. If you want a travel trailer and you want a V8 engine, you've got to pay a tax and a price to have that V8 engine. And I believe in that. Hardly anybody I ever talked to will support me on that. Oh no, man, you're not going to take my V8 engine away. That's because you're traditionalist and you're stuck in the mud of an archaic petrol-driven economy. Grow up. Anyway, that's my little speech.
I like that. I like to hear when people are talking about building a better future, and so instead of living in the past, of saying like, no, things can get better and we can have compassion. We can plan our decisions based on compassion for a sustainable future.
Yep, that's it. I mean, I would vote for a Republican in a minute who had that platform, like a Dwight Eisenhower or somebody. I would do it. I'm not loyal to any Democratic Party. Believe me, they got just as much dirt going on their side that the Republicans do. So, I mean, I'm open-minded to who's making sense and who's making, efficient, morally based decisions. And right now, we don't have that.
That I don't know, maybe I'm not. One idea is that so many people who consider themselves, not worrying about the future at all, they are seriously just expecting that Jesus is going to come back and it's not going to be anyone's problem anymore. Like it's just the second coming rapture end times mindset. And so That's like, oh, it's not my responsibility. And like, okay, you don't know what you're doing to future generations.
You're right. So, people always want to buy hurricane insurance when the hurricane's just coming off the coast into inland. That's when they go, oh, but it's like, yeah, you're right. I think a lot of the born agains who really believe in the rapture are saying, well, hey, we're not going to be around anyway, so who cares?
I have a video about that on my channel too, about how the rapture isn't real.
Because they think their children are going with them. They think that a 5-year-old kid's going to go up with them into this rapture. He's not going to live his life on Earth anymore. He's just going to get raptured. So why do we have to protect the Earth for him or her? It's crazy.
Those horrible atheists.
You can't prepare for the short-range future by selling it out to some long-range story tale,
Yeah.
So that's difficult. And believe me, I'm a believer. I love the teachings of Yeshua. I look at, and he's one of my heroes too. Now, you could even say, well, did Jesus really exist? I don't care. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he's just invented by a bunch of people that just wanted to market this concept of this religion. Who knows? But it doesn't matter. The words that are written and the teachings that are taught, I still subscribe to, So people would say, well, that's blasphemy. No, it's not. I believe in the teachings of Yeshua. I don't necessarily want to sit and dwell on the fact that he's some guy that's waiting to have something happen, or he's going to try to wave his magic wand and make things do that. No, I don't think about that. I just think about the teachings are good. They're the same teachings that even Muhammad was teaching. He loved Jesus. He based a lot of his monotheism on the teachings of Jesus. It says it right in the Quran. You just got to throw all that other crap out of the way that the Ayatollah spouts, And it's like, just look at the core of what monotheism is all about, including Judaism. It's all the same, you know.
There's so many things in common, and just looking instead of saying, no,
What
I
about,
know everything.
am I going to sit here and say that the world is only 6,000 years old?
I know.
I don't think so. You're not going to sell me on that one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, those things that I mentioned earlier, if followers want to check out any of that stuff, it's all available. And, I'm just trying to reinvent myself while I'm waiting to go back to work.
Great.
I'm leading with my skill set, which is I play guitar pretty good and I play bass pretty good. I'll probably be doing bass lessons too here shortly. But for those of you who want to start getting involved and learn how to play guitar or just get better, go to fretfriends.com, as I mentioned, and just check it out.
Yeah. The way that I end my conversations is
Okay.
I give hugs.
Okay. Across the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking this time to talk and share out of your passion. I love it.
My pleasure. Thank you, Kate, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for watching this far. If you're still here, please tell me if you enjoyed this conversation or not. Even just typing, I enjoyed this, helps the algorithm to understand that this content is appreciated and hopefully will promote it further. Now, I shall give you hugs. Hugs! And nostrils of death.